Okay, well, I just wanted to do this video just to document what I found trying to follow the instructions for installing this AC system. So at this point, I have installed a new water pump and spacer. Not necessary to put the AC system on, but I want to do everything at the same time. So I thought I'd just get that out of the way, and if it helps, it helps. If it doesn't, well, I guess that's too bad. So, in order to follow the instructions, this hose fitting here had to be moved from the old water pump to this new one. And then the instructions for the air conditioning install say to aim it at the filler tube. So that's what I did. So I've disconnected these hoses for now. These will eventually go back on here. One goes to this, and the other one is going to go to that vacuum controlled on-off valve. So they're just out of the way right now. To do the install of these brackets, I found it very hard to follow the instructions because the pictures were really low quality pictures. But you have to take the generator off. So while I had it off, I took it to a local shop and had it rebuilt. And then you have to take the original generator bracket off. You don't reuse the original generator bracket. So I took the generator off, had it rebuilt. And while it's off, you take this bracket off, the old one, and then you put the new one on. It's pretty straightforward as far as putting this new aluminum piece on. That part's not too difficult. The difficult part is it's got all of these other brackets. There's one here, this is a new one down here. And then there's a little one here that's a new. And then there's this one here that's a new bracket. And once they're on, I say, oh yeah, that's pretty straightforward, looks obvious. Let me go on the other side here. But when you've never done it before, it's not obvious what they're talking about sometimes when they say, put the bracket on top of the other bracket, or put it between here and here. They also give you some new bolts for some of these. As you can see from the color, this is the old bolt that I reused. I had a problem with this one. Anyways, this is an old one that came out of some other place on here that I reused here because it was longer, because it wasn't getting a good grab on the old threads, and it actually popped loose. So I had to get a longer bolt to get more threads engaged. Also, what I discovered was, as you can see, I had to put a couple of washers in here to space this, because without those washers, it just, it wasn't geometrically lined up properly. And the washers don't hurt anything. They're, it's fine, but you're gonna have to use them if you have the same problem I do. And I had the same problem up here with this one. You could put it this way, or you could flip it around and try and make it go on the front. But when you flip it around, it just winds up right in the center here. And then when you put it this way, it winds up where if you actually tighten it down without those couple of washers in there as a spacer, you'd be putting too much stress on either this arm, or you'd be putting too much stress on this bolt head, and you really don't want to do that. If you read the specs for these compressors, they're very fussy about stressing those ears. So you definitely don't want to stress those ears by having things out of alignment. And then this last one back here, this one in some ways is the most trouble, because you have to drill a hole into this boss on the front cover for the engine. You have to drill a 1-inch deep hole, and then you have to tap it. So that went reasonably well. So now it's all mounted, and that's where I am right now as far as that part's concerned. I put my rebuilt generator back on. The other thing I wanted to point out is the mounting of the condenser. Obviously you had to take the radiator shroud, the radiator fan, and the radiator out in order to get in here and do this. So all that stuff is still out. And this thing comes with these little ears pre-attached, with one exception from what I've done. This one here was pre-attached down here. And I didn't like it there because it was going to make this go right across here and cover up where I'm going to have to tighten that fitting when I put the hose on it. So I relocated it to here. It really doesn't matter. You can put them in any of the holes you want. They slide between this radiator mount bracket, which is pretty heavy metal, and the sheet metal of the car, which is right behind it. And again, the instructions weren't entirely clear. They said to loosen the screws that hold this thing in. So I loosened this screw up here, and the one here, and the one here, and then of course the same on the other side. What it looks like, and the ones that are hardest to get to are these top ones. They're really hard to get to. You have to work through these holes and around here. Well, now having done it, I don't think you actually need to loosen the top ones. You might get away with just loosening the two side ones, because that'll free up everything but the top. And then you'd have to pry the sheet metal apart possibly a little bit, you know, because you have to slide this. These pieces of metal have to slide between the heavy bracket and the car's sheet metal. That's what mounts this and holds it in place. So when I took this apart and loosened them, you know, the radiator was out and that condenser wasn't in place, so I had lots of room to take a wrench and just put my arm in here and loosen those screws. You can see the screw head. So there's a screw here, and then there's another one down here. And those two, you know, you have to loosen to get these things in between them. It's easy to do when the condenser's not in. So you just do it, you know, and you give it another thought. Well, now that the condenser's in, they're a little harder to get to. But what I found was, with my 3/8" socket, it's not hard at all to just go in through the grill. And you can just go in through the grill and you can get to them with the socket, and you can tighten them right back down, no problem at all. And so that's why I'm suggesting that if you're going to do this, you try not to loosen those top ones, and then you only have the two on each side that you loosen, and you can tighten them up later by going in through the grill. So that's where I am right now. My next step is going to be to start putting the hoses on this. Once those hoses are on and routed, that's pretty much it for, you know, doing anything on the front of the engine. You know, be able to, at my leisure, put the radiator and the shroud and the fan and all that stuff back in place and get the fan belts back on. I finished installing pretty much the rest of the AC. Got the hoses and everything in. Here's how the hoses wound up getting routed on this. Compressor wound up sitting at a little bit of an angle. I don't know if you can really see it, but you know, it's not really straight up and down. It's almost, well, it's probably about a 30 degree, which is fine. No problem with that. So we've got hose here. Wound up routing the water hose through this part. The other water hose in front of those. There's enough room in between them to get the gauge connections on for the AC gauges. So these were supposed to route together. I think behind here, you can see the one hose does come out, and it did wind up going behind it. I tried putting this other hose behind it, and it just wasn't long enough. It only came to about, you know, I could only get it to about this far. So I wound up routing it in front of it, and you can barely see that down there, but I put they gave me a dual clamp. It's really a dual clamp. Both hoses were supposed to route together, but they didn't, so I put that one there, and then had to drill the holes, put it through the firewall. That worked out okay. This is the wire that goes to the compressor. Comes up here. I had to splice it into the connector that goes onto the switch. And then the wire that came off it wasn't long enough to make it all the way to the compressor, so I had to splice another piece of wire in, put a connector on it, and it runs into the compressor clutch. This thing here is not quite in its final position, and that's because I put the gauges on it, fired up my pump, and when I did, it had a leak. So what I've been doing for the last half hour is pulling connections off and looking for the O-ring to see what's going on with the O-rings. Then when I took this top one off here, eureka, what I found was the O-ring got damaged when I installed it. And this is the O-ring. You can see it got crushed and torn. So I would caution you, really be careful putting those things together. It seems to be really easy to tear those O-rings. So this isn't quite in place because I took this loose again so I could get to these fittings easier. So it's gonna go back down there where it really belongs. Well, the installation's complete. I've had it out and drove it around and it worked great. There's a lot of blower capacity. Once it was cooled down, I was able to turn the blower down to the lowest speed and it still was fine. And that's on, I think it was probably about a 90-degree day. So I just wanted to do a quick wrap up of this installation. These are the hoses where they came in. I drilled the holes through there. I got to take that paper off of there. That's that gooey, sticky stuff that insulates the plumbing. And as far as the wiring I did, I had put in a auxiliary fuse box up here, and that's what I wired to ignition source to provide the power. And then that blue wire is the wire that goes out to the compressor clutch. And then in the engine compartment, the hoses, we talked about these before, the heater hoses here, ran these other hoses down here. They go in the back. I have not got the replacement for this pressure switch yet, so it's bypassed. I may never replace it, I'm not sure it's needed. So I talked about these hoses before. I had to run it on this side of the heater because it wasn't long enough to go where this other hose went. So got that going. I don't like the way this ear pokes up into the radiator hose. When it's out of warranty, I will probably cut that ear off. Then the hoses go into the front part of the car and then down into there. I put a piece of fuel hose here, have something for these hoses to ride against so they weren't right up against that metal. Put a couple twist ties to hold it together. Seems to be working good. So I just wanted to close it out and show the final installation. Fan belt lines up nicely. It does cool good. Didn't have any trouble with the air conditioning system cooling good. So that's it. That's the installed system.